The United States just made a fatal mistake. By seizing Venezuela's oil assets this week, they thought they were punishing an enemy. But what they actually did was terrify their biggest ally. At 4 a.m. this morning, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia officially responded to the Venezuela seizure, and the response is catastrophic for the US dollar. The Crown Prince has reportedly issued a directive to de-risk the kingdom's exposure to American banks. The logic is simple. If Washington can confiscate $60 billion from Venezuela today, they can confiscate $600 billion from Saudi Arabia tomorrow. The trust is dead. Saudi Arabia is not waiting to be the next victim. They are retaliating now. Sources confirm that Riyadh is quietly liquidating U.S. Treasury bonds and moving that capital into the only asset the U.S. cannot touch, physical gold and silver. This is not a drill. This is the end of the 50-year petrodollar agreement. The U.S. stole Venezuela's oil, and in return, Saudi Arabia just killed the dollar. Welcome to HistoFund. Today, we cover the backlash that changes everything. To understand why the financial world is freezing up this weekend, you have to look past the headlines. You have to look at the mechanics of what just happened in the Atlantic Ocean. The mainstream media is selling you a movie script. They are showing you the footage of U.S. forces capturing the leadership in Caracas. They are calling it a victory for democracy. But in the boardrooms of Riyadh, Beijing, and Dubai, they aren't watching a movie. They are watching a bank robbery. What terrified the global markets wasn't the capture of a dictator. It was the seizure of the assets that followed immediately after. Less than 24 hours after the operation, the White House announced that the United States would be taking control of Venezuela's oil production indefinitely. They didn't just freeze the accounts, they appropriated the physical commodity. We have confirmed reports that U.S. naval assets have already seized multiple tankers in the North Atlantic. Specifically, the Russian-flagged tanker Marinera and the Sofia were boarded and commandeered. These ships weren't just turned around, they were taken. The oil on board, worth millions, was declared property of the U.S. Treasury, ostensibly to repay debts and fund the transition. The administration has explicitly stated they will take up to 50 million barrels of crude oil and sell it to benefit the U.S. taxpayer. This is the Venezuela trap, and it is the single most dangerous legal precedent set in the last 50 years. Why? Because for the first time in modern history, the United States has effectively declared that sovereign immunity no longer exists. For decades, there was an unwritten rule in global finance. You can sanction a country, you can freeze their bank accounts, but you cannot simply take their physical resources and sell them for your own profit. That was the line between sanctions and piracy. This week, Washington erased that line. Now, put yourself in the shoes of Mohammed bin Salman, the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia. You are sitting in Riyadh, you are watching the news, and you see the U.S. government declare that it is seizing 50 million barrels of sovereign oil to pay for administrative costs. You look at your own balance sheet. Saudi Arabia currently holds billions of dollars in United States Treasury bonds. You have massive investments in the U.S. stock market and real estate. Until yesterday, you viewed those investments as your safety net. You thought that money was safe because the United States respects property rights. But after the Venezuela seizure, those assets don't look like a safety net anymore. They look like hostages. The message Washington sent to Riyadh was unintentional, but it was crystal clear. We don't need to buy your oil anymore. If we get desperate enough, we can just take it. And if you hold your wealth in our currency, we can seize that too. This is why the reaction from Saudi Arabia has been so swift and so silent. This isn't a diplomatic protest. This is a liquidity crisis. Our sources indicate that the emergency meeting called in Riyadh wasn't about politics. It was about risk management. The kingdom's financial advisors are currently running stress tests on what happens if the U.S. freezes Saudi assets tomorrow. The result of that test is obvious: total exposure. Saudi Arabia realizes they are trapped. They sold their oil for dollars for 50 years. They took those dollars and lent them back to the U.S. government by buying treasuries. They essentially pay the U.S. to consume their oil. Now, they see the U.S. seizing tankers like the Marinera and erasing sovereign debt with military force. The risk premium of holding the U.S. dollar just went from 0% to 100% overnight. This is why we are seeing the de-risking begin immediately. Saudi Arabia cannot declare war on the U.S. They cannot fire missiles, but they can fire the dollar. They know that if they try to sell all their treasuries at once, they will crash the market and destroy their own wealth. So they are doing something smarter. They are executing a shadow exit. They are stopping new purchases. They are letting old bonds mature and not rolling them over. And most importantly, they are redirecting all new oil revenue away from the New York banking system.